The event will start in a minute. We are giving some time to people to join. Welcome to this event, everyone. I'm Salma Mahbub, and I'm pleased to moderate this i2i webinar, which has been organized by the i2i Consortium. Before going further, to ensure full accessibility and inclusion, I would like to inform you about accessibility and housekeeping rules. This event provides international interpretation for those who would like to have the multi-pin option enabled. Please contact host through the chat box. You can also activate the real-time captioning as subtitles here on Zoom or through the internal link provided in the chat box. All attendees are in listening only mode with cameras off. Please use the chat box for technical questions and the Q&A box for content questions. The meeting is being recorded and will be shared online afterwards. A post-event survey will be launched automatically after we close this event. Please complete it. We will use your feedback to improve in the future. Now let me give you a little bit of background information. The Innovation to Inclusion i2i program is a 3-year project funded by UK government's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, that aims to deliver direct and sustainable change for women and men with disabilities in Bangladesh and Kenya. By supporting them to access waged employment in the private sector and demonstrating the potential for change of successful interventions that strengthen disability inclusion. The program is a consortium led by Leonard Cheshire together with a diverse and complementary group of international and local organizations. As I said, I am Salma Mahbub. I am the founder, General Secretary of Bangladesh Society for the Change and Advocacy Nexus BSCAN, which is an organization of persons with disabilities participating in the i2i project. Today, we will be talking about assistive technology and employment of persons with disabilities, especially considering this new COVID change environment that we find ourselves in. First, we will hear about recent research, and then we will have a discussion with 4 people who have expertise in the topic. With that, please let me introduce Smriti Dhingra. Smriti Dhingra is an inclusive urban planner and disability rights activist from India. She has been a Commonwealth Scholar and a Women Deliver Young Leader Program awardee, and now works passionately for the inclusion of persons with disabilities, women, children, and elderly through a gender and urban planning lens. Smriti is going to tell us about the work that has been conducted by i2i in Bangladesh and Kenya to assess the technological needs of people with disabilities and employers for wage employment and retention. This research also looked at different technologies that are available to people with disabilities in low and middle income countries to access waged employment. And finally, this research looked at the current future technologies available to the employers in the labor market. It also assessed the supply and demand of these technologies and their relation to the needs of the employers. Smriti, the floor is yours now.
Thank you, Salma. Hi. As Salma shared, that I'll be presenting findings from the research study conducted earlier this year on assessing the need of assistive technology in employment for persons with disabilities in Bangladesh and Kenya, basically two low and middle income countries. This research study was conducted with Leonard Cheshire Organization under i2i project and funded by UK government. So the scope of the research was to assess the assistive technology needs, demands, and supply for persons with disabilities and employers in gaining and retaining employment. The methodology in this research we used was a qualitative study conducted through Zoom, and there were total 20 to 25 participants, both from Bangladesh and Kenya, out of which 10 were persons with disabilities. Basically, we looked at persons with visual disabilities, hearing disabilities, and locomotor disability. There were 10 employers and 2 to 5 professionals involved in research and development of assistive technology. Uh, there were total 3 interview schedules which were designed and focused on overall introduction and overview of the participants, organization, and the context they were working in, and assistive technology they used at the workplace, inclusion at workplace, current AT and emerging needs, and policy and vendor context, and of course the COVID-19 context. Next slide, please. In this study, we defined AT as umbrella term that includes devices, systems, and services needed to enable people with disabilities to live healthy, productive lives. It included both devices and services that has been specifically designed for disabled people and others that benefit everyone, including disabled people. This definition was given by WHO in 2018. Through the literature review and scoping interviews, the key findings on market assessments of AT were for persons with visual disability, they mostly used cane, braille devices like printers, embossers, and keyboards, screen readers like JAWS and NVDA, mobile technology, and navigation applications. For persons with hearing disability, mostly they used low cost hearing aids, mobile technology, navigation applications, closed captioning services, augmentative and alternative communication applications such as WhatsApps and other video communication services. By persons with locomotor disability, they used mostly mobility aids such as tricycle, crutches, walkers, wheelchairs, orthotics and prosthetics, seating and positioning aids, and mobile technology, augmentative and alternative communication applications, and navigation applications. One of the key finding which we can notice here is that irrespective of the disability, participants were heavily dependent upon or desired the use of digital assistive technology, which was screen readers, mobile technology, navigation applications, alternative communication applications. Next slide, please. So in this slide, we basically are talking about challenges faced in accessing assistive technology by persons with disabilities. The common ones we all know is associated stigma, lack of affordable assistive technology. But one of the key finding is lack of accessible and assistive technology supportive infrastructure, which mostly means unavailable of smooth and accessible roads to use wheelchairs, unavailability of accessible public transports, ramps, elevators, etc., so that there are less chances to of AT to get damaged. Next slide, please. Other findings were low quality of AT products and services. Another few key findings, which I'm going to elaborate, is limited or no access to affordable repair services, which means repairing of wheelchairs, hearing aids have also been expensive, and it is difficult to find technicians to repair them. Lack of trained professionals meant that shortage of professionals to rehabilitate the users with AT, or as explain the use of assistive technology, especially in rural parts of the country. Limited knowledge on use of assistive technology again meant that due to lack of variety of assistive devices, users were not aware about the available products in the market, which would support them in daily living. Next slide, please. In this slide, we will talk about challenges faced in gaining employment. Two of the common uh, challenges were disability associated stigma, limited in understanding and sensitivity of employers towards needs of persons with disabilities. The key other challenges were limited access to education and other skills required in gaining employment, which meant that persons with disabilities were mostly graduates with vocational skills. They were mostly employed in BPOs, garment industries, or at data entry level jobs, which required limited skills to perform the job. Some of the participants as well agreed that access to education for persons with disability in small town is difficult due to cost, inaccessible infrastructure, associated stigma, and lack of opportunities. Low access to AT, especially digital assistive technology, was also an important finding where most of the participants still used basic mobile phones and did not have access to smartphone technology or internet due to unaffordability factor. Next slide, please. Uh, some other key challenges were lack of reasonable accommodation um, uh, in gaining employment and during employment, as most of the employments were pure service company, which required good communication with the clients. Therefore, participants were expected to keep up with expectations. Some were small companies with limited budget, which also did not provide uh, provide which were not able to provide changes within the organization, which promoted inclusion or training of employees to understand needs of persons with disabilities. Lack of accessible and inclusive mobility related infrastructure and services. And the other last challenges which they faced in gaining employment was lack of accessible and inclusive infrastructure policies at employment, which meant bringing changes within the policy structure of the organization or making changes in physical infrastructure such as building ramps, installing lifts, braille signages, making washrooms accessible, etc. Next slide, please. In this, basically, we are talking about findings on provision of assistive technology and disability inclusion within employment. These are the perspectives of persons with disabilities. Job provisions only through job fair was the key highlight. Um, Persons with disability mostly get employment notification either through job fairs or notification from the organizations they were associated with. uh, Persons with mild disabilities were mostly preferred by the employers. No specific policy on assistive technology was available within the organization, only need based provision. No specific budgets were as well there. During inductions, no participants were introduced to sections written for were introduced to policies which had sections written for persons with disability or inclusion of persons with disabilities and or provision of assistive technology or any special budget provision. Next slide, please. Rented office spaces were also reason to not being able to provide infrastructural inclusion and was only limited to building ramps and renovating toilets. Mostly, very few employers prefer training on disability inclusion for their office staff. Employees who have awareness on disability or have family members were appointed managers of employees with disabilities. Even though the persons with disabilities agreed about reasonable accommodation at workplace, it was mostly limited to lowering blackboard in case where a person with disability is employed as a teacher, or providing sturdy chair and desk, or shifting the employee to other work branch based on their disability. No specific AT such as requirement of wheelchair, mobility aid, or digital assistive technology was provided. Next slide, please. In this slide, we are talking about provision of assistive technology and disability inclusion within employment. These are the perspectives of employers. Employers were obligated to hire persons with disabilities as either there was a requirement from the clients, which mostly in the garment industry, or they were receiving incentives from the government. Very few believed in capabilities of persons with disabilities and invested in them. Further, there is no limited or no understanding of AT and disability inclusion within the within the organization and among the employees. There was a limited supply of AT as they did not. There was no specific AT policy or budget or maintenance contract within the organization. It was because it was only recently that all these employers started hiring employees with disabilities. So the time span we can look at is last 5 years. Next slide, please. Employers also preferred hiring persons with disabilities through job fair as they get support of disabled people's organizations or disability rights organization in guiding them on disability inclusion, or any training of employees on disability inclusion, or supporting their persons with disability employees with disabilities within the organization. Job roles assigned were basically based on the disability, and no specific budgets or disability inclusion policies within the organization was there, and all these needs were addressed on everyday basis. They seem to be there seemed to be no formal training as well as no formal disability inclusive policy within the organization. Next slide, please. uh, Reasonable accommodation, where mostly, like for example, employers provided extra lunch time or sent employers early during the lunch time, or seating policy was such where um, employees were made to sit near the washrooms. um, so such kind of reasonable accommodations were provided. There was a limitation in hiring of persons with disability was also seen, as the key concerns from the employers were budgets or no formal training on disability inclusion. Uh, High demand and support from disability rights organization and national government was the highlight of these findings, as employers preferred hiring through them, so that the guidance on disability inclusion could be provided, and also if there's any kind of monetary support the organization could get to provide reasonable accommodation to the employees. Next slide, please. In this, we're talking about the impact of COVID-19. So here on the screen, you can see the quotes from both from persons with disabilities and employers. I will give a bit of a context. Uh, in the loss of jobs section, mostly persons with disabilities who were appointed either in factories or as data operators or in BPOs lost their jobs as no work opportunity occurred for them. Offices were shut down and persons with disabilities went to their native places. On the other hand, employers shared that because of the office shutdowns, persons with disabilities never came back. Small business owners only retained employees who were good at dealing with customers. In retaining and resuming jobs section, most persons with disabilities felt that working uh, from home was tough for them due to lack of available technology such as computers, etc. And employers also did not provide them. Employees who were working in BPOs faced issues as well as softwares were inaccessible on mobile phones and they did not have computers or they did not own computers. Uh, some of them also expressed the desire that working from home is a skill and they felt that uh, they required more computer training and guidance in working from home, which employers did not offer. Next slide, please. In COVID-19 and use of assistive technology theme, persons with disabilities generally felt that if they had computer skills, they could apply for jobs which could be done from home. They have felt the importance of the same, but they also struggled with perceptions of employers where persons with disabilities are expected to take up only certain type of job profiles. Employers, on the other hand, even though recognize the importance of computers, but most of the job profiles which the organizations offered did not require any specific investment on assistive technologies. Next slide, please. In the need for digital assistive technology post COVID 19, clearly their need for investment in computer trainings, software trainings, and devices has been recognized by persons with disabilities as it would bring more varied employment opportunities to them. Since most of the participants belonged to low middle income group and did not achieve higher education, they have to invest on computer literacy to obtain jobs which could provide them security. On the other hand, even though the employers recognize the needs, but often job roles within the organization does not require investment in digital assistive technology. But they agreed that navigation applications, investment in smartphones by persons with disabilities could definitely support them. Next slide, please. So these are the key recommendations. The first one is important to reduce social stigma. Other one is development of assistive technology must be user centric. Assistive technology must be developed by testing in local environment as it will test the durability and agility of the product. Provision of rehabilitation such as provision of training to user as well as caregivers must be made once the users start using assistive technology. Next slide, please. It is important to invest in trained resources, not only for identifying and making provision of assistive technology, but also for the counseling and rehabilitation. Gap between testing for disability and provision of assistive technology must be filled, such as regular testing for eye to see if the person is needed uh, for is in need for spectacle or regular checkup for hearing loss. Assistive technology user must not be responsible for the cost rehabilitation and training. Next slide, please. With the focus on innovating assistive products, the focus should also be on implementation of assistive devices, assistive services. It is important to partner with local resources, institutions to develop the assistive technology. This will encourage DIY production of assistive technology as well as bring in innovation in the field. Repair and maintenance are the other important aspects, and an ecosystem must be created for this. Next slide, please. With the promotion of use of digital technology, it is seen that it should be made affordable. Internet data must also be made affordable. Employers must be encouraged to hire persons with disabilities, and they should be provided support to purchase assistive technology for their disabled employees. And last recommendation is organizations who are working with employers to hire persons with disabilities, apart from disability inclusion training, must support them where they are encouraged to purchase assistive technology and provide assistance in changing policies and budgets for the benefit of disabled employees. Uh, Next slide, please. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Smriti Dhingra, for clearly setting the scene and giving us a good review. We will now have a conversation around this topic, diving deeper into some of the specifics. For this discussion, let me introduce our panel. We have John Mabua from Kenya. John is a disability rights advocate who works as a program and ICT communications officer for United Disabled Persons of Kenya, UDPK. We have Joshia Sangma from Bangladesh. Joshia is a graduate of the University of Dhaka. He registered on the i2i career advisor platform and completed multiple courses online. He now works for disability organization CBM as an advocacy and communications intern. We also have Asia Mo from Kenya. Asia is a sales development representative at Stepwise Deporium in Nairobi. She is the first female rower to the present Kenya in either Paralympics or Olympics. She has been a user of the NCPWD career portal Kenya and a participant in i2i skills training. And we also have Hamimur Rahman from Bangladesh. Hamim is the head of human resources at Envoy Textile Limited with 20 years of work experience in HR. Hamim is always engaging himself in learning current management trends and evolutionary concepts through training at home and abroad. So we all welcome you, the panelists. Before we begin, let me just quickly remind you that if you have questions about the subject, you can post these in the Q&A box. If you have technical questions, please use the chat box and our colleague will help you out. For the panels, the first question I would like to ask to the John, Joshia, and Asia. The first question is, thinking about yourself or people you know, can you give any examples where assistive technology is crucial in making sure persons with disabilities are in employment? Are the panels, John, Joshia, Asia, can you hear me? John? I think John is having a poor connection. Okay, Joshia, you can go on.
Thank you, Salmapa, for giving me the floor. Hi, this is Joshua Shangma. Currently, I'm working as an intern at CBM Bangladesh Country Coordination Office under Advocacy and Communication Department. So as per the question, I think it's very crucial. I think the assistive technology is very crucial for the person with disability. I think it's like extension of the person. As per my condition, as I have a locomotor disability, mostly mobility impairment, so I have to rely on assistive device such as a wheelchair for my daily mobility. So I think it's very crucial for me to have a wheelchair for my movement, because if I'm assured of the mobility aid, I think I can work as any other employee of any company. So I think it's very important to have an assistive device. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, apologies. I think I'm having some issues with the network. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you.
All right. Regarding the questions on the issue of the assistive devices are extremely crucial when it comes to employment for persons with disabilities. And we have seen the vitality of the assistive devices, especially during pandemics when we were having COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of people lost their employment. Now, just giving an example of some of my colleagues who I know use assistive devices specifically. I have a colleague who is visually impaired, he is blind, and he is employed and he uses a computer which has the screen reader, software. This is JAWS. So using JAWS as assistive device, my colleague has been able to deliver, work, communicate, and meet deadlines just like members of the organization. So the screen reader, it helps him to participate in work employment for with others. I also have another colleague who uses hearing aid. So he uses the hearing aid and is employed. So he uses the hearing aid to do his work for communication, for interaction, and also for social activity of the organization. So just giving these two examples of the devices on the hearing aid and the screen readers, we know and we have experienced the need on usage of assistive devices when it comes to employment and persons with disability.
Okay. Asia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Hello.
Okay.
I'm Asia Mohammed. As you know, I'm an i2i portal user. So to me, assistive device is very crucial. I will give you my own example. During the COVID-19 2020, it was really tough for me because as you have heard that I am a Paralympian, so I couldn't compete locally, neither internationally. So I was just at home. But once I get the i2i training, the training, I had to log into the i2i portal. And then after 2 days of logging in, I got a call for data entry employment from Stepwise. So to me, the i2i portal was like assistive technology because I did it at the comfort of my home. I was just sitting at my bedroom and signing to the i2i portal, and just like that, 2 days, I got the job. So it's very crucial. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question to three of you. What are the challenges that people face in getting or using these assistive technologies? Can you say that also?
Yes. So among the challenges is that I realize, I will give you an example of my field of work. So it was, I'm not the only person with disability that was hired by the company. There are so many. But one thing I realized about them, they were not that computer literate. So that was among the challenge for them to use the assistive technology devices and all that stuff. But you see, for the company, they are very accommodating. They gave them the vocational training to help them do the work, regardless of them being illiterate. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Joshua, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Salma Appa. Thanks again. I think the challenges are mostly associated with in getting those assistive device or equipments are associated with mostly affordability and availability and affordability. As per the availability concern for a country like Bangladesh, there are not a lot of scope in getting assistive devices because I think there are not many suppliers who can provide ensure the supply of this kind of assistive devices. So availability is one of the most concern here, and also there are some barriers in the custom due to which it's very difficult to import assistive device from the foreign countries. And for a country like us, the custom treats a wheelchair like any other vehicle, so it piles up the cost, so it becomes much more costly. So here comes another problem, affordability, which not a lot of people are capable of. So I think these are the most problems in getting these assistive devices.
Thank you. John, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not to belabor what my colleagues are saying, but just to add on it, on the challenges.
John, your sound is breaking up.
Can you hear me now well?
Yeah, it's better now.
All right. Thank you for that. I was saying I don't want to belabor what my colleagues have said. I just want to add some few points. On the issue, the first thing which comes to mind when you talk about assistive device challenges, I would think around the affordability, which Joshua was sharing about. In our country, in Kenya, we have some issue to do with the affordability of the ATs, assistive technologies. For example, I was talking with my colleague of mine the other day, and he was telling me that the latest release of JAWS is a screen reader that helps persons who are visually impaired to read online pages and all that. So he was telling me that now the current JAWS is going for around 100,000 Kenya shillings. That's around $1,000. So not a lot of people who are looking for employment, which mostly are youth, can afford to have this device. And again, we know these devices in our country, they are not zero rated, so they are taxed. So the affordability really becomes a challenge. Another thing is about the accessibility. Now, when we talk about using assistive technologies, especially the softwares like yours, and you have a person who is visually impaired and they need to go online to apply for jobs or apply for government tenders, because nowadays everything is being done online, the employment, jobs, and the government tenders, and all these websites. So if you have the assistive device and the website is not accessible, is not made to ensure that it is well aligned to be used by assistive device, then it also becomes a problem. So apart from affordability, we have accessibility issue. And also what my colleague was talking about is about the skills. You might have also the assistive device, the website might be accessible, but the user might not have the necessary computer skills to use the assistive device and the necessary technology. The last point I want to put across is about the employers themselves, because I think I'm not sure, but on employment side, it's like they have not accelerated the need for them to invest in assistive technologies, because we have seen some cases where a person with the technology will not be hired because the company or the employer is not ready to invest in the assistive technologies. So there are some challenges facing the user and also some challenges on assistive technology on the side of the employer themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were very good points. Now I would like to come to Hamimur Rahman. Thinking about the responses we have just heard, what is the experience of employers? How can we solve these problems? What do you think?
Thank you, Salma.
Okay.
We as an employer, we took all the responsibilities for our disabled working people to provide them with assistive technologies like wheelchairs, hearing aids, everything. So our company policies, whatever equipment they require, company will provide. So we are providing it. So for other concerns, it might be like that if it is less quantity, company can take it. If it is more, then they can have a 70-30 ratio, maybe 50-50 ratio, something like this. But our company policy is whatever assistive technology they require, company provides it fully. Right now, we have 14 disabled people, and we are providing all the assistive technology to them completely complementary.
That's a great thing to hear from you. And you think it's the policy that should be changed and it should incorporate to provide the assistive device to the persons with disabilities in the company, right?
Yeah, my specific recommendation will be, since we have a very less number, we could afford it. But if, if the company has maybe 50, 100 or more than like this, then they can go for 80-20. Maybe more than 100, 70-30, maybe more than 500, 50-50, something like this. So that the burden is split among the employers and the employee both.
Yeah, that's good. My next question was to everyone. What are the practical steps needed in addition to change in policy to ensure reasonable accommodation is provided? You can start first. I
can start.
Yeah.
So to have reasonable accommodation, definitely we have to have a mindset change first. That yes, we will be hiring people with disabilities. That is the first thing we should do. And we should have a budget to achieve that requirement or to achieve that target. And third of all, we have to have a source or a supply chain management to get disabled people to the right job. In one hand, we have a job. On the other hand, we have a CV bank with disabled people. So we have to find a mechanism to make a bridge so that whatever we need, it is available, or they also know whatever they need, we can provide them that supply. So this supply and demand equilibrium point, we have to identify. That is
Thank
the
you.
most important.
Thank you. Asia, would you like to say something? What kind of policy do you have in your country? If you could share with us.
So policies we have in our countries, like every company should have like 3/3 of persons with disabilities as their employers. So it's like a must, and we've got like we don't get taxed. We are tax free as disabled, and every company it's like in constitution. It should be disability friendly for accessible for all of us persons with disability. So it's simple. So regarding the question, it's all about finance. Once you have, once they have the actual finance, the right budget, they could accommodate us all. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. John, would you like to add anything with Asia?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would like just to mention a couple of things on some of the practical steps that I think should be taken in order to address this. On our country, Asia, I think you have touched on our legal framework regarding employment of persons with disability and also assistive technologies. We have a national ICT policy. Our national ICT policy is expressive talking about accessibility and assistive technologies. Also, we have Persons with the Disability Act 2003 is talking about reasonable accommodation. Our Kenyan Constitution is talking about issues to do with the rights of persons with disability, and also on UNCRPD Article 27, Article 28 on work and employment social protection. All these on issues to do with the legal framework, I want to say they have been fairly addressed in our country, although we might need now to align some of the existing legal framework to the UNCRPD and also make some of them more inclusive. For example, there have been a push around our social protection measures. We are pushing to have these social protection measures include assistive devices. So that assistive devices then could be affordable or they could be given for free. So there's something happening around our legal framework. Now, apart from legal framework, some of the practical steps that I think should be taken is the continuation of this employer engagement, which I think is extremely important. Employer engagement. So you have organization or persons who are forming collaborations, meaningful collaborations with employers, and also pushing forward training on disability inclusion in workplace. Because I want to imagine that through these collaborations with employers, that's when they will learn that providing reasonable accommodation for a person who has disability doesn't have to be expensive. They will also get to know that we have tax rebates, or we have some remedies for companies that employ persons with the disability.
Okay, thank you. Joshua, as Hamim said, they provide accessibility assistive device in their company, whoever the persons with disabilities come to the work for them. And they also have a portion of 70-30 or 80-20 portion for persons with disabilities to work in their factory or company. What do you think? What do you think the policy should include, or is it a very good step from their company?
Salma, one correction.
Yeah.
We provide 100%. 70-30 is for the companies who will have more people, not like us.
Okay.
Maybe for other companies, like those who have 1,000 people, maybe 500 people. For them, it might be difficult to provide 100%. So it was a suggestion to them. In our case, we provide 100%, no ratio.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Joshua.
Yes. So first, I would like to appreciate the initiative taken by Hamim Bhai and his company. And as per my opinion, I think to ensure the reasonable accommodation, we need to take a person-specific approach first, because we all know that disability is not a homogeneous term. Different people have different kinds of disability. So it needs to be person-specific approach, I think. And also, as per my experience, I can say that mostly people who have mobility impairment like me faces challenges in terms of transportation, and in mostly because if I have to go to the office, I have to take a much more costlier and expensive ride than any other employee who doesn't have that disability. So my personal expenses are much more higher. So I think we need in the policy, I think we need to ensure this kind of reason adjustment, because of the person specific requirements, I think. And also there are many people who can have different kinds of issues. So I think we need to resolve all those issues. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, let's move to the next question. In many countries, the COVID lockdown have meant that people have had to work from home. This means many people, employees and employers, have had to make big changes. So my question is, as well as the assistive technology itself, what are the other enabling factors that will ensure that persons with disabilities can stay in employment? I would like to ask first Hamim
Sure.
Murrahman.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Me again. Okay. So in our case, we are a manufacturing concern. So for a manufacturing concern, work from home is kind of difficult to maintain because it's a physical movement of products and goods and services. So what we have focused is, instead of letting them work from home, they're working regularly, but we have initiated some preventive measures like hand wash, sanitization, isolation rooms, temperature checking. Those things we are doing. Because for a manufacturing concern, what we are manufacturing, it's difficult to move outside the factory premises. So we are more focused on keeping them in the factory or in the premises, but with health hygiene means, health consciousness, awareness programs, isolations, separations. These are the things we're trying to promote. So in our case, work from home is very less likely to adopt. I think it is good for all. Actually, this is also applicable for all the manufacturing concerns. So
Okay.
from a service perspective, yes, it is very much possible, I believe. But from a manufacturing concern, it is quite difficult to let people work from home because the machines are in the factory.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand.
Carry on.
Okay. Asia, would you like to add something here or share your experience?
Yes, yes. So I will still give you of my example. So during coronavirus, this year, still things were a bit tight, but as I've told you, I'm a Paralympian. I told my company that I have to train. So they are like, and I'm telling them that I'm to train, but not in the country, in Portugal. And they're like, it's okay. It's okay. You can work while you are in Portugal. So I was in Portugal while working for a company which is in Kenya. So
Okay.
as Amir says, it all depends with the services of the company. You see, like our company deals with data processing and information management. So it's kind of different with something that needs handwork or manufacturing, such things. So it was easy for me as my employers were very accommodating. All I needed was a laptop and a good network connectivity.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Joshua.
Thank you, Salma Appa. I think COVID-19 and the pandemic has brought up many challenges and also some new changes in our society. I think during the lockdown, working from a distant place or working from home has been introduced largely. So it is in fact an enabling factor for a person who has a mobility impairment. So it is now very easy to conduct a meeting and also attend this kind of webinar through the internet. And also, yes, I agree, in the service-oriented workplace, it is much more easier to work in a digital sphere. So I think it is a kind of an enabling factor. And also I think it reduces the mobility and also the transportation issues that we face regularly. So it is kind of a blessing of the new normal.
Yeah, and I think it creates the opportunity for the severe persons with severe disabilities also.
Yes, I also think that.
Okay, John.
Yeah, sure. Just to add on what my colleagues are saying, apart from the assistive technologies, other factors that I think should be in place to enable persons with disability remain in employment will include developing the persons with disability skills. When they have the employment, just to ensure that they remain competitive, their skills need to be sharpened and also developed further so that they remain in employment, they remain productive, and they remain competitive. Another thing that I would mention is we make sure we hold duty bearers accountable to implement the existing laws and the policies regarding work and employment. Because in our country, those laws and policies regarding work and employment, they include reasonable accommodation, which includes things like working from home. Lastly, which I think is important, is to ensure this meaningful engagement with employers, they are kept alive. Because through that, then they will have to understand we need to give persons with the disabilities their fair share of employment quota. Thank you.
Thank you. Although there are any challenges, remote working is something for something that persons with disabilities have been advocating for many years. We have now seen that it can work. Again, I would like to specifically ask this question first to Hamimur Rahman. My question is, how can we ensure that the employment sector recognizes the challenges and opportunities of remote working for persons with disabilities, and what are the practical steps needed to ensure that they retain employment?
So there are two aspects. My first point is that refers to my earlier discussion that for a manufacturing concern, it is difficult to allow people to work from home because machines are here. It's a physical movement of goods. That is one. Yes. The second point is, if we have a proper database or some training requirements earlier to the providers who provide disabled people database, we can tell them we need specific disabled people for this specific task, and they can be trained. For instance, we have looms which makes big noise, so we have to give protective equipments for the regular people to cover their ears. Now, think of a scenario if we have disabled people here, those who cannot hear. Even you don't have to provide them any protective equipment. They cannot hear, it's good for them. So they are more comfortable there. So such kind of arrangement should be made where employer will give a demand or requisition that I can accommodate 10 deaf people or 15 deaf people. So supplier will also find or accommodate 10 deaf people for them. So this matchmaking can be a step to keep people employed in this sector. I'm talking about from the perspective of textile factories in Bangladesh, because we have the experience in textile only, especially me. So I do not know about other industries, but from textile perspective, this is my view.
Thank you. Okay. Joshua.
Yes, thanks again, Apu. I think as per the presentation have mentioned it earlier, I think most of the companies try to include person with disabilities either for the incentive, government incentive, or for the client requirements. But I think what we need to do is, I think we need to first we need to sensitize all our people, because disability, because not many people are concerned about the term disability, and it is a bit hard to understand. So I think we need to take person with disabilities as a human diversity first, and we need to take an approach, and we need to think them as a equally capable person. So I think I think we need to sensitize the employers from all the sectors, and also we need to build a bridge between the applicants and the employer, because I think even today I was searching some circulars. So where I found that there is a distance between the applicants and the employers, because most jobs most jobs require the skills and knowledge which we as an applicants are not getting from our educational institutions. So I think i2i can work in that sector. They can build a bridge between the employers and the applicants. They can they can take skill development activities, and also they can sensitize the employers first, so they can take up the person with disabilities as a equally capable employee of their company. So yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. John, can you respond?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. To ensure that employers get to know the challenges that persons with the disability face while they work from home. The only way to ensure employers know that is by meaningfully engaging with them. If you engage the employers, maybe through these disability inclusive trainings, it may be through awareness raising, it may be through sensitization. If you engage the employers meaningfully, I imagine then they'll become aware of the challenges that persons with disability go through when they work from home, and what might be the necessary recommendation, the necessary accommodations that they might require. You could also use data also to engage with the employers on the same. You can collect data around some issues, some factors from persons with disability who are working from home, and then using the data, then you can meaningfully engage the employers and just show them and let them know what the challenges that persons with disability are undergoing as they work from home. Now, to ensure that persons with disability also they retain the jobs during the pandemic or even after, again, I want to also think around issues to do with the having meaningful collaboration with the employers, training the persons with the disability or on skills, could be different skills, and also on how to use the existing software regarding the ATs as they search and also go on with their work. And also you could use the persons with the disability who are in employment and who are working from home as the champions to talk as champions to talk with employers regarding issues to do with the job quota, reasonable accommodation, accessible workplaces. So leveraging on the existing workers who have disability as your champions, that also could ensure we have more people being engaged in that company, and the company becomes more aware of issues regarding employment of persons with disability. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the all panelists. We have a question and answer. There is a question from the panels. It said, how do we ensure that everyone is included in these employment initiatives? For example, the livelihood of women with disabilities has been more impacted by COVID, and there are other groups of people who are always left behind. Persons with intellectual disabilities, psychosocial disabilities, deaf blindness, and people who face multiple barriers because of intersectionality. So how do we ensure everyone is included? Who wants to answer that?
Okay, I can answer that.
Yeah, sure.
So that by making rules or by making policies, I think that might not work as we expected. But my suggestion would be to have very big propagations and awareness programs. Once we have the awareness programs among everybody, then automatically people mind will change that yes, we have to include these disabled people in the mainstream. Then every company should proactively have a set of percentage for disabled people, not because of a buyer requirement or client requirement, not because of government says so, not because there is a peer pressure or something, but a proactive approach. So to make people think proactively, I think big awareness programs should be initiated by social organizations, NGOs, or people like this i2i innovation programs. If these can be done in more frequent manner, I think people mindset will be changed, and then automatically this problem will be starting to be resolved.
Okay, thank you. There is another question. What are measures put in place to ensure that PWD's employment is guarded in future if something like COVID-19 happens? Asia, would you like to answer that?
Yes, yes, yes. So it all depends on the employers. Something, let's say, like he has said, something like COVID-19 happens. When COVID-19 happens, it was like that, something that you didn't expect, just like that. But we, in our situation with persons with disability, it's all about company policies. So make things for them to make sure for us are guarded is that we have to have that agreement with the employers. Like, before you are employed, you are like signing a contract. You should be signing like a contract, like doing this and this. How am I protected? Yeah, so that mutual understanding between the employer and employees.
Thank you. Joshua, would you like to add anything?
Yes, Apu, I think most of the answers have been said, but I think I would like to say that persons with disabilities are much more vulnerable to this kind of situations. So I think the employer should take it more sensibly than the other employees. So I think they needs to be guarded so that they do not get sacked off during any kind of emergency situation. So I think protective measures should be taken from the employers and also the government authorities. Thank you.
John.
Yeah, I would like just to add something a little bit on the question, which is a very good question. Just to in order for us to ensure persons with the disability don't lose jobs or lose opportunities of employment, whatever pandemic happens, I think it is extremely important for companies, or in fact, non-governmental organizations, or the duty bearers, the government, to and also develop and also perhaps come up with inclusive. It could be inclusive emergency preparedness guidelines or documents. And this inclusive guidelines or policy would include things to do with employment of persons with the disability. So if we have inclusive emergency preparedness policy for the company, which will also touch on employment of persons with disability, that means 2 years from now or 3 years from now, if we have tsunami, if we have another disaster, because you have inclusive pandemic or emergency response policy, that means the jobs and also opportunities of persons with disability will be ensured and guarded. Thank you.
Thank you. We are coming to our end to our program. In the last few minutes, I would like to invite our panelists once again, just to very briefly give us some takeaway thoughts. Please can each of you in 1 or more than 1 minute tell us what would be your number one priority action to ensure that persons with disabilities can maximize the opportunities that the digital technology gives us in the finding and keeping employment. John, you can say first.
All right, thank you for that, and thank you guys for everything. Just to ensure persons with the disability retain employment or have access to employment opportunity, what I would give most priority to is really engaging the employers. If we could have a framework of meaningful engagement with employers, and this will include this will include trainings, this will include working hand in hand with the employers, so that you can ensure they employ persons with disability, doing everything around that area with the employers, trying to show them the incentives that are available, trying to show them reasonable accommodation doesn't have to be costly, trying to show them persons with the disability can work and deliver on equal basis with others, meaningfully engaging, collaborating with employers, I think would go a long way to ensure that employment opportunities are open for persons with the disability. That includes other factors. But for me, if we were to mention one, that would be it. In fact, apart from the assistive devices, so that goes without saying. Thank you.
Okay. Joshua.
Yes, Appu. First, I would like to thank the organizers for having me in this wonderful webinar. I have taken away a lot of informations and from this webinar. So I think I would like to prioritize equally the skill development and also the sensitization for the employers. I think we need to take actions for the for the skill development of the person with disabilities to make them enable for the future, and also we need to sensitize the employers so they can actually understand the disability deeply and can make them comfortable in their workplace. So I think we need to give it a twin track approach equally on the both.
Thank you.
Part.
Thank you. Asia.
Yes, Salma. So for me, my first priority will be equipping them with computer skills for them to be up to date with the assistive device. And also vocational training. Let's say if after work after work you get to do some training, a bit of it. If you don't know how to use a computer, screen reader, such thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Smita, are you with us? Would you like to add anything? Comment?
Yes, hi, sir. Yes.
Okay.
I think to me, the key priority points would be mostly influencing the policies both assistive technology related policies, employment related policy, and of course, persons with disabilities act and other inclusion related policies. The other would be definitely skill development and sensitization of employers would be the three priority areas uh, for inclusion.
Thank you. Hamim Rahman, would you like to say something?
Okay, I'm good. Sorry. My message to the PWD people will be, in your area, find what is the job requirement, what kind of demand is there, and train yourself according to that, especially on vocational aspects, short-term courses, short-term skills. And those who are providing the jobs for them, the same message that you help them or you propagate what kind of people you need so that disabled people can prepare themselves for that with short-term trainings and short-term courses. So the thing is, they should have it in mind, what is the market demand. If they can prepare themselves according to market demand, the job is theirs.
Thank you. Thank you so much, all the panelists and the researcher who make this discussion live. COVID-19 situation has taken so much for our joys, valuable times, and loved ones also. But it also has created different opportunities, especially for persons with disabilities. Long-awaited demand for work from home is now a reality for all. So let's continue this process to include more persons with disabilities in employment sector. So that is the end of our event. I would like to follow an upcoming. I would like to follow an upcoming webinar, Disability in the 2020s, a digital decade for an inclusive world, which is coming up on 13th October. You can see a link in the chat box. You can join to that program also. With that, let me say thank you very much, everyone, for attending, and particularly thanks to our panelists and the organizers and the i2i Consortium and the UK Foreign Commonwealth Development Office. Lastly, just a reminder that you will now see a link to an post-event survey. We would very much appreciate that you take just a couple of minutes to complete this for our learning for the future. Thank you again.
Thanks to all. It's good to know everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was a great panel, great supporters, great listeners. Thanks to all of you.